Space Cadet Pinball was such a big part of my childhood that I've decided to design and build a real-life version of it in this video series. In the last video, I tested out some stronger materials for the flippers, made my own metal bumper rings, and I even worked out a way to get the ball back to the shooter lane without interfering with the right kickback lane. Most of the simpler mechanisms are nearly complete now, so if you want more details on them, make sure you go back and check out the first two videos in the series, because this video is going to focus almost entirely on the wormholes. At the end of the last video, I had a basic version of the wormholes working. They would catch and eject the ball without any problems, but as anyone who's played the game would know, that isn't their only function. Besides the catch and release that I've already covered, the wormholes actually serve two other separate functions at certain points in the game. In some levels, the ball can enter into one of the three wormholes, which then transports it to one of the other two holes and ejects it back out. It sounds simple enough, except that the third function is multi-ball, where the ball enters one wormhole and then all three of the wormholes eject a ball at the same time. Because of that third function, it really only leaves me with one way to make all of this work. I need to have a reserve ball at every wormhole that can be put into play with a moment's notice, and at the same time, I need the wormholes to be empty so they can accept and discard a ball back to the ball drain for the wormhole function to work. That also adds to the complexity of the ball drain, because now I need to come up with a way to replenish the spare balls at the wormholes quickly and reliably without interfering with the shooter lane return mechanism. So I'm going to tackle that part first. For those of you who haven't seen the previous video, here's a quick recap on how the ball return mechanism works so far. When the ball falls off the bottom of the playfield, it enters into this track and rolls down to the bottom corner of the playfield, where there is a sensor that detects the ball and fires the solenoid to send the ball back up around this loop and back down, so the lifter mechanism can put it back into play when we need it to. This loop is here so that the ball can't roll back down the ramp, and so that gravity will help feed the balls into the lifter. I can store up to 6 balls here, so this seemed like the ideal place to take the ball from when I need one for the wormholes, so I got to work redesigning this section of the ramp to do exactly that. I tightened up the loop and added this extra section of track along with a mount for another solenoid. This will allow me to shoot the first ball out of the queue and up towards the top of the playfield. The solenoid alone won't be enough to get the ball all the way to the top though, as the ball has to travel almost 800mm from here, so I needed a way to help keep it moving towards the top. I thought about adding a series of loops with solenoids and sensors so I could launch it up in stages, but every stop would add a small amount of time, and I want to be able to reload these wormholes as quickly as possible, so I had to do something different. Let me show you what I came up with instead. First, I loaded up the tough 1500 resin in my Form 4 and printed out these tiny flywheels. This is the same material I used for the flippers in the last video that has similar properties to polypropylene, so once it's finished its 70-degree curing cycle, it should be perfect for this purpose. I've designed them with a groove to suit an O-ring, and I included these little ribs that will hopefully bite into the O-ring so it doesn't slip when the ball passes through. Next, I picked up a pair of these RS370 brushed motors. At 12 volts, these guys are rated to spin at 8100 RPM, meaning in theory the ball could come out of here at up to 30 kilometers an hour. In practice though, it'll be a bit less than that because of slippage and the increased load on the motors, but hopefully it will be enough to get the ball all the way to the top of the playfield. I did originally put a set of bearings in the bottom of the housing, which you can see me doing here, but I later removed these because I found the top bearings were good enough on their own and the motors were binding up a bit with both bearings installed. The O-rings just stretch over the flywheels, they shouldn't need any glue, and then the flywheels just press onto the motor shafts. The tough 1500 is slightly flexible, so it stretches over the motor shaft and holds on nicely, which is lucky since these motors just have a plain round shaft. These are the top bearings I mentioned earlier, which get pressed into the top cover, and finally the cover bolts onto the bottom track and into these threaded inserts I installed earlier, and I've wired up the motors so they both turn in opposite directions. I printed out the rest of the ramp parts along with these stands, which will angle the entire test setup at 6 degrees, which should be steeper than I'll ever need the playfield to be. Let's give it a test. I haven't bothered setting up the sensors this time since we already know they work, so I'm just manually firing the solenoids. The first solenoid shoots the ball up and around the corner with no problem still. The tighter radius does slow it down a little bit, but it still has more than enough speed to get to where it needs to go. Now with the motors turned on, I'll fire the second solenoid, and wow, that's fast. The motors have no trouble getting the ball all the way to the top of the playfield. They are a bit noisy, but since the flywheels are light, they spin up to speed very quickly. So I will only have to turn the motors on for half a second before I fire the solenoid and then off again about a second later. And since it will be buried under the playfield, I reckon you'll barely notice it over the game's sound effects and music. Well, that's the first part of the puzzle sorted. Now I need to work out a simple way to choose which wormhole to direct the ball to. I was really hoping to just use a single solenoid for this, but everything I came up with was just too mechanically complex for my liking, so I decided to keep it simple and make a pair of two-way diverters instead. It does mean another solenoid, but I still think it will be more reliable than any of the other options. Here's what I came up with. I 3D printed the main body of the diverter and I've pressed another one of the same bearings from the flywheels into it. It probably doesn't really need bearings, but they're less than $1 each and it should mean I don't have to worry about these jamming up in the future. The diverter itself is next and it just gets a bit of 5mm rod pressed through it as a shaft. It has no real load on it, so as long as it's a nice tight fit on the shaft, it'll stay in place just fine. Any material here will work, but I happen to have some carbon rod here that's about the right size, so that's what I used. Next, I installed another threaded insert into this hole which will be used to keep the top bearing mount in place. Then I can just put a single bolt with a washer through this hole and into the back hole on this little solenoid. I've used a bit of Loctite here, so hopefully the bolt won't be able to work its way loose. I'm only using the rear hole here to hopefully avoid the double arm setup that we've had to use on all the other mechanisms. Last but not least, this printed lever arm gets pressed onto the shaft and connected to the solenoid, and that's it. We've now got a nice, simple and fast solution to choose between our wormholes. I'm just going to run a second one of these off one of the outputs from the first one, so I'll be able to send a ball to all three wormholes. Now that I have a way to reload spare balls, let's move on to the wormholes. These were an absolute pain to work out, mainly because they're all in such close proximity to the other mechanisms, but I think I've got it sorted now, so let me show you what I came up with. I started out with the same little wormhole top cover, but I've added a hole to the bottom of it that is large enough for a ball to pass through. I've also removed the magnets from the housing itself so the ball doesn't get stuck in there. Next, I needed a way to lift and lower balls through the hole, so I made this arm. It gets a 6x6 magnet pressed into the end of it so that it can grab and hold onto the ball when it rolls into the wormhole. The arm needed to be quite long as I just don't have enough room in the wormhole opening for the ball to travel through a tighter radius. Next, to mount the arm to the bottom of the playfield, I made this bracket which also mounts all of the other required solenoids. Each wormhole actually has 3 solenoids in total, but I'll get to the other 2 in a minute. Before I install the arm, I need to connect it to the ball lift solenoid. I've started trying to standardize all of these linkages across the entire machine to cut down on the number of different parts to order. Speaking of ordering parts, if you want to get parts like this made for yourself, then this video sponsor, PCBWay, can help. All you need to get started is a 3D model or even just a flat 2D pattern of your part. Just upload the file and then set your quantity, material and surface finish, and PCBWay will do the rest. They can also do sheet metal folding and thread tapping if you need it. You'll just have to specify the details in the drawing to go along with the model. PCBWay also do machining, 3D printing, injection molding, and of course, PCB fabrication and assembly. PCBWay have been sponsoring my channel from pretty much the beginning, and they are helping make massive projects like this one possible. So make sure you check out the link in the video description the next time you need some parts made. This link just bolts into the arm like this and attaches to the solenoid at the other end with a couple of printed spaces to keep it roughly centered. That whole assembly then just bolts onto the mounting bracket like this. I did find I had to stretch out the spring on the solenoid just a little to make sure it was strong enough to support the ball without sagging, but other than that, that's our ball lifter sorted. While I was getting stainless parts cut, I got a new version of the kicker arm made with a little extra section at the top. Because the solenoid has to push up now to kick the ball out, it needs to attach to the back of the solenoid. I'll eventually get some of these machined in steel, but for now, I've just 3D printed one. It threads onto the end of the solenoid shaft in place of the nut that was originally there. Next up, we need a couple more of the same stainless links and printed spaces that we used earlier to attach the lifter arm. The kicker assembly just bolts into this end of the mounting bracket, and now it should have no trouble kicking the ball off the arm. Now all that's left is to work out how to select between discarding a ball and loading a spare ball. This wouldn't have been such a difficult problem to solve if the space I had available around the mechanism wasn't so tight, but I've got a solution that works. This little ejector arm slots in here and is held in place by this cover that allows it to slide freely backwards and forwards. Last but not least, this little solenoid connects to the ejector arm and moves it, and that's the whole wormhole mechanism complete. Now, when a ball rolls into the wormhole, if I want to discard it, I can just fire the arm solenoid, which will pull the ball down, hitting the ejector arm on the way down, which will kick the ball off the arm and send it down the drain. When I want to load a spare ball, I can just fire the little solenoid, which will pull the ejector arm back and allow the spare ball to roll freely onto the lifter arm, which will then lift the new ball up into play. And that's all there is to it. I can't easily test all of this together yet because it really needs to be bolted up to a playfield to test it properly. I do really want to test some of the other mechanisms at the correct angle though, so I think it's about time that I build a first draft of the playfield. The first step was to pick up some material from my local hardware store. I'm going to do this as cheaply as possible because I'm certain I'll have to replace all of these parts as I work through the rest of the design, but I think having this here for a full-scale test is an important step in the process. I've got 12mm MDF for the baseboard, 6mm for the middle layer and 3mm for the top layer. My laser can cut 12mm MDF, but the bottom layer has some pockets, so I just brought it with me to work and cut it on our big industrial CNC router. First, I drilled all of the 3 and 5mm holes. I then did the pockets and cutouts with a 6mm end mill before finally finishing off the outside of the board with a 10mm cutter. I could leave this unpainted, but I live in a pretty humid climate, so raw MDF doesn't usually last long, plus having some paint on here is just going to make it look so much better. First, I undercoated it with a bit of primer I had left from renovations. Then I got a sample pot of blue mixed up for me for the final coat. This is a British paints colour that's called River Watch, which I felt was at least a reasonable approximation of the base colour used in the game. Since the middle and top layers don't have rebates, I can do them on my laser. The material I bought is a bit too big to fit in the machine without being cut, but fortunately this laser has removable pass-through panels, so I can leave part of the material sticking out while I cut. The 70-watt laser makes short work of 3mm MDF, and it even handles 6mm in one pass at 8mm a second, which makes all of these parts a breeze. I painted the middle layer with just the white undercoat I used earlier, and I had a can of black spray paint that I used on the top layer. The entire thing is bolted together with 3D printed standoffs. I've bolted in the pop bumper bodies, wormholes and some blanking plates for the drop target cutouts, as they will need some modifications to fit around the wormhole mechanism. I've also finally printed out the last piece of the top playfield section so that I can test the ramp. I've installed the rubber bands for all of the slingshots, but I'm not going to have time to get much of this wired up for this video. What I do want to test though is the flippers. They are still the one thing that I'm most worried about power-wise, so I really want to see how they'll perform. So let's give it a try. I think that went pretty well. There was actually a number of things I wanted to prove were possible before I went further with the design, and I think I've ticked off every one of those boxes. I didn't manage to catch it on camera, but I had a couple of shots where the ball made it all the way up the top of this side ramp to the hyperspace kickout. That is one of the longest shots you have to make in the game, so I think that's a good indicator that the flippers are powerful enough. I was also worried about the purple ramp, but it turns out that not only is it possible, I've managed to hit it plenty of times without any trouble. The ball does need a bit of speed to get up the ramp, but it's far from as difficult as I thought it might be. I did discover a couple of little problems that I need to fix too. Because of the shape under the purple ramp, if the ball hits it at just the right speed and angle, it can get wedged in there. That should be simple enough to fix. I'll just make sure the tapered section underneath doesn't start until it's above the height of the ball. Even with the changes, there should be plenty of room in there to fit the black hole kickout. One of the other problems I found is with the ball drain. Surprisingly enough, the ball sometimes just sits there rather than rolling down the drain. There should be enough angle for it to work, so I actually think I can put this one down to the surface of the playfield. Wall paint really isn't an ideal surface finish for a pinball machine, as it leaves a slightly textured surface which actually slows the ball down. My plan for the final machine is to run a thinner baseboard with a layer of clear acrylic on top. That should protect the artwork nicely and allow the ball to have a much smoother surface to run on, which I think will solve this problem. All of this testing was done at 6 degrees, which I believe is around the angle that most modern pinball machines run. Comparing my footage against the actual game, I think the ball is rolling back down faster than it is in the game, meaning I can probably back off the angle a bit if I wanted to. The keen-eyed among you probably noticed the angled blocks in the kickback lanes. I just put them there for testing since the kickbacks aren't working yet, and it made it easier to keep the ball in play for the video. As a few of you have correctly guessed, I don't have a heap of experience with a real pinball machine, so please let me know in the comments if you think the flippers have enough power. They are running on 40 volts in this video, and I will be bumping that up to 48 volts once I have an appropriate power supply here. So if they are close to powerful enough already, hopefully that extra 8 volts will be the difference. Before I go, I'd like to say a huge thanks to everyone who's joined the Patreon so far. You guys are the best. Hopefully you're enjoying the behind the scenes stuff. I'm getting closer to being able to start releasing the files for some of these mechanisms, so if that's why you joined, hopefully you won't be waiting too much longer. And to everyone else, thanks so much for watching. If you're enjoying the project and you want to follow along, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It would mean the world to me. Let me know what you guys think of the project so far. I'm super keen to get a few more of these mechanisms wired up for testing, so I'm going to get stuck into that now. See you next time.